Walmart employees, what's the worst thing you have seen inside your store? I've only been working at a Walmart for 2 weeks. I've had 3 people lose their temper on me. One woman slam her cart into someone else's cart because she couldn't buy alcohol with an expired ID. And one guy tried to walk away with a whole cart of groceries, in which a different customer walked after him and literally dragged him back inside. Again, 2 weeks. I'm getting asked this a lot, so I'll explain. Stores can't accept expired IDs because they are considered invalid. If invalid IDs were accepted, then it would create an aftermarket for those IDs, which would then make it easier for people under 21 to get a hold of something they could potentially use to illegally purchase alcohol. As a police officer, Walmart pretty much keeps me employed. I bet you have a bunch of warm and fuzzy stories. I heard a story on NPR on how Walmart is an incredible drain on a city's police forces, almost to the point of abandoning the rest of the city altogether. So I used to stock the crafts section on overnights. I'm kinda an awkward person, so no human contact was great for me. This old guy on a scooter insisted upon sitting in my aisle for like hours, just staring at the needles. Okay, whatever. I stocked everything I could. But finally I needed him to move, and honestly I was a little creeped out at this point. I mentioned it to my manager on the way to lunch. After lunch he was gone. Turns out he had died there like 5 hours ago. This definitely qualifies as worst thing you've seen in a store. Wait, he was just sitting in the scooter, slumped over and dead. Apparently. Not really slumped, just sitting, attering at the product wall. Didn't look dead, but in my defense I was 19 and awkward, so I kinda avoided getting too close. Had a customer in a motorized scooter, his personal one, not store provided, come up to me at the sporting goods desk, and he asked me where the cans of compressed air are. I walk him over to some, and he thanks me, grabs a can off the shelf, and proceeded to start huffing it right in front of me. Did this happen in WV? We had a guy do the same thing in a Walmart and cops arrested him for a DUI. That's illegal in itself and highly unethical. And yet I wish I'd seen that ticket being given. He was operating a motor vehicle. The scooter vehicle does not mean only a car, and was under the influence of what is presumably a drug, the inhalant. What exactly are you taking issue with? Wyoming. I called a manager and had them deal with it. My understanding is that he was kicked in, but that was the end of it. My best friend roomie worked Walmart and technically died there after having an aneurysm. The worst story was about the hamburglar. A persons who would put a packaging of raw hamburger in their cart and then change their mind and leave the hamburger in some random spot. Sometimes it would be a couple of days before the hamburglar's deed was uncovered. It was so bad that almost every employee started inspecting their area of responsibility, and pretty soon, the hamburglar's foul deed were being discovered very quickly because no one wanted to deal with a leaky maggot mess. Then the assistant manager got caught leaving a package of hamburger in the shoe department. Wait, how the file are we getting inside a sealed package? Are those eggs already there when you buy the meat? Yup, it's why you cook your meat. D. It's been years now since I worked there, but this is something I will never forget. I worked in the photo lab, which was right next door to electronics. There was a man and a child being maybe 8, looking at video games. I kept hearing the child say he had to go to the bathroom, but his father wouldn't take him or let him go alone. Long story short, the boy obviously couldn't hold it any longer and crapped his pants. The father then told the son to shake it out. The kid did just that, and tons of turds fell out of his shorts onto the floor. The smell was atrocious, and I honestly could not believe what I was witnessing. The father then walked over to my coworker and said, "Yeah, you better clean this up," and promptly left. I was stunned. I used to work at Walmart in the automotive department. A man drove his car to bay door for a tire rotation, and the first thing he did after he got out of his car was point at me and shout to another tech and said, "You better not let that white MF touch my car." I had never met this man before. My coworker told him that I was the only one working the tire section at the moment. The customer then said that unless a black man changed his tires, he would leave and not come back. I wanted to tell him off because he was being totally prejudiced and racist. But my department manager complied to his request and didn't allow me to do my job for no other reason than me being white. I put in my 2 weeks notice that day. I worked at Walmart for a year back in 2011. While the sales floor itself was clean and organized for the most part, the back room looked like a hoarder's paradise. It was about the size of a small gymnasium and had boxes of products going all the way back to the 90s. Jesus Christ, yes. We did inventory at the start of this year, and I had similar conversations at least 10 times. Slot 1. See if this fits on the shelf. Sir, these are store-use wiper blades. From 2003. Toss it behind the auto counter, then let them deal with it. And then we find it in a random break box the next day, one we forgot from the day before. I've posted this in another Walmart thread. It's still one of my favorite stories from my mom. My mom worked at Walmart for about a year. She actually liked it as she was more active, but she decided to quit after the jewelry department manager had a meltdown and started throwing jewelry at customers. One old lady got pelted in the head with a heavy ring box, and it was over. Turns out the manager was selling the jewelry to friends and family, but would keep the boxes and stuff them with rocks and trash, so inventory would stay the same. She had the meltdown before she was caught. They had to drag her out of the store that day. The bathrooms, especially the ladies, they just don't care about keeping it clean or hygienic. Disgusting is all I have to say. Working part-time as a runner barkeeper in a nightclub, I can tell you, ladies' bathrooms are the most disgusting place on earth. Are the women's bathrooms worse? I've only been into the men's room, and it varies wildly, but I can't imagine it could get that much worse. See, it's funny, but most people I've ever spoken to who have been responsible for bathroom maintenance and sanitation all say the same thing: women's restrooms are horrifying. A customer in a power scooter, his own, not from the store, was at the fabrics counter asking me what would be a good fabric that could be waterproof. He only needed a 2x2 foot piece, and I was explaining to him how I had to cut by the yard, not by what size he asked. He was not understanding me completely, and in a moment of old man anger he lifts up his shirt, pulls his pants down, and screams, "I just want to keep my colostomy bag from freezing in the winter." I saw it all, cut him a 1-yard piece of fabric, and sent him on his way. I bleach much needed. I worked customer service at Walmart for a little bit, and one night, just as I was closing customer service down, a man came in screaming for help. He was wearing a white shirt, but it was drenched red in some areas. He said he was shot twice, and he thought he was gonna die. He lifted up his shirt to show us he wasn't just some druggie and really needed help. Lo and behold, there were 2 holes bleeding around this man's torso. Lucky for him, an off-duty paramedic was in line buying groceries and called it in fast for the ambulance. Worst ever, some people signed up for an oil change, then threw one of those household bug bomb foggers into their car while they waited. When the technician went out to pull the car in, it was full of white smoke from the insecticide and the interior was covered in thousands of roaches all trying to escape the fog. We told them to leave. Worst this week, guy signs up for an oil change, and the technicians find 2 live cats in under the hood of the minivan. The owner came out to deal with it, saying they were his. Someone throwing their used children diaper on top of the freshly baked cookies I just put out had to throw out 700 cookies. The number of times I've seen people place their small dogs on top of produce is astounding. Small dog owners are the worst. I don't know why, but this one has made me the angriest. It's irrational, but I firmly feel like the person who left the diaper belongs on a cross by the road. Degenerates like you belong on a cross. Was working part-time at Walmart and was having a smoke break. There was a guy sitting on the bench with a paper sack. I thought, oh, has got a beer in there or something to that nature. Nope. While several of us employees were sitting there, dude pulls out a white paint can, blasts it into the paper sack and starts huffing it till his eyes roll back and he slumps out. Everyone was kind of in shock, but then a few seconds later he pops up, grabbed his stuff, and went on his merry way. A car that plowed through the garden section. I think one person got injured. The driver had a heart attack while getting in out of the parking lot. I didn't see the incident. I started my shift just minutes after, so I got there just as they were taping off the area, and I'm like, whoa, what's that doing there? I guess there's a lot of other gross things I've seen, but there's something about that, and how little of a catalyst there was, that made me question stuff. Imrad Mike Mart Stories 1. Old guy pisses himself and then proceeds to sit on every piece of furniture and desk chair in the store too. A single guy repeatedly setting the women's underwear on fire over multiple weeks. 3. A guy turning yellow and passing out right in front of me. Old guy pisses himself and then proceeds to sit on every piece of furniture and desk chair in the store. Better than him pulling a Gemini. I worked as a photo lab specialist for 2 years and saw some really awful pics. The worst was a toddler surrounded by marijuana buds and guns. We had to get the on-duty cop involved when the guy came back to pick them up. For more info on why the cop was involved, I believe the guy was in the pic with the kid and had gang signs with one hand and almost putting a gun to the kid's head. It's been a while so it's a bit fuzzy. Not Walmart but Lowe's. Someone had a mobile meth lab set up in lawn and garden. Jesus. Like, did the meth headess involved think that people wouldn't notice? Meth headess thinking pig 1. Was their equipment labeled Vaminous Pest? This is amazing. I want to hear more, but at the same time, I don't think there's any more than can be said. Not a Walmart worker, but one I went to had a mouse in an aisle that scurried away when I passed by it. Reported it to a worker and they did not care or believe me. This is the same Walmart though that has small birds like robins and sparrows flying around from the ceiling rafters. Not a Walmart employee, but a Target team member. Found a trail of diarrhea starting in cosmetics and leading to the restroom. Others guests were just walking through and running it over with their carts, making the trail even bigger. It was a great day. Brand new associate here. The computer-based learning CBL system uses 2016 model mini computers. Running Windows Me, but with Walmart's own system very poorly flashed on top of it. Well, I'm not a employee, but I went there to shop once, and there was a guy in only an underwear fighting with her employee at the registration counter with an open bottle chocolate sauce.